Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of the Survival Project. I have the lovely Sarah O'Connor with me today and my third guest. I'm very privileged to have this lady with me today to share her insight into living with IBD and also living with MS. So Sarah has a very in-depth understanding of what it's like to live with chronic illness, and I'm buzzing to get her insight and to get her to share her lived experience of juggling both and living with it. So Sarah, thank you so much for being here. And I suppose if you just like to tell everyone just a little bit of your own story from diagnosis and your own life.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for having me. Absolutely buzzing to be on here. I think any opportunity I can get to stand on a little soapbox and talk about chronic illness, I take it. So thank you. Yeah, so my story, I always say it begins a little bit before I got my own diagnosis. So my mum was actually diagnosed with Crohn's in 1999. So I was 2.5. So I suppose my childhood was shaped by knowing that there was something wrong with my mum, but probably never really having a name, just that she needed to use the bathroom more and she was quite thin and, things like that. She was quite fatigued. So I was always, as I got a little bit older, I suppose I became a bit more aware of what it was, learned about it. And then my actual own diagnosis story begins probably really officially in 2020 when I got my diagnosis. But I was kind of always the sick child and there was always something wrong with me. And from about the age of 16, I was seeing a gastroenterologist and I had had 3 colonoscopies by the time I was about 21, 22, but they could never find anything. It was IBS or it was stress, or there was no actual signs when they would go in and have a look. But it all came to a head around COVID time. So I had just finished my master's. Life was on the up. The roller coaster was just happening. Things were moving. And suddenly I just got very unwell. And in my heart, I kind of knew. So when I say very unwell, I'm talking about passing blood, pain, diarrhea, just losing a lot of weight without trying, all the kind of, I suppose, symptoms that are synonymous with IBD. And luckily, I suppose if luckily is the word, because of my family history, really quickly I got seen. And on the 8th of December, I was diagnosed with indeterminate IBD. So I say I have Crohn's because it's just an easier story, but at the moment I'm actually still within they're not sure. I have signs and symptoms of both within looking within a scope. And then, as you mentioned, I also have a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. And that one was 2022. Total shock. Whereas Crohn's, I suppose, look, there was a family history. I was aware of it. MS, I really didn't know anything about it. My undergrad was kind of science related. I had done a little bit about it, but I just got a little problem with my eye. There was inflammation in my eye, and a really good eye doctor sent me for a brain scan. Led on then to a lumbar puncture, and in March 2022, I was diagnosed with MS. So suddenly I had 2 titles that I never really asked for, and a really complicated medication journey and a general kind of journey ahead of me.
That is some story. My God.
I condensed it really quickly there. I was like, how quick can I tell this story without boring everyone?
I don't think you could possibly bore anyone with the story that you have. As you said, picking up titles, like you haven't let it stop you clearly, looking at the degrees behind the real titles.
They were all I don't think I could do that. No, like it was all this is the stress of these. It's funny, all of these were kind of just around the time everything was kicking off. So I was like, cost me enough, I'm gonna frame them. Maybe
100%. Absolutely. I just want to circle back to, you said you were always the sick child. That's something that was, from speaking to my own mother, something that was a part of my life. I think back, I don't remember being sick, but it seems to be a kind of theme from speaking to people who suffer from Crohn's, that there is nearly a domino effect or a chain of previous history of health issues. When you were sick when you were younger, what was the main issues you were kind of having?
Yeah, so it's funny actually, when I was listening to you and your mom speaking, I was like, yes, yes, yes. I had antibiotics, I would say 1 a month for 10, 11 years of my life. I had chronic tonsillitis. I got glandular fever twice. I got chickenpox twice. I was getting all these things that you're not supposed to get more than once.
I was
And
going
I
to say
suppose
chickenpox twice.
like it's actually meant to be scientifically impossible. The same with glandular fever. And I suppose, look, it's only now in hindsight I'm kind of joining up the dots and thinking my immune system clearly had a problem, but no one was picking up. And, as you mentioned previously in the second episode, antibiotics were just quickly thrown out and we didn't question doctors back then. So yeah, it was just persistent, those type of kind of infections. And then, yeah, I always had a sore stomach. And probably from about the age of kind of 12, 13, I was cutting things out like dairy or wheat and seeing if that would make a difference. Like I would remember as a child getting up in the middle of the night and pacing, like we live in a bungalow, pacing up and down the hall because I had what I now know is like really bad trapped gas pains essentially. And I still do it as a method of helping me, but I would just pace up and down, and my mum would be talking to me like 12 o'clock at night, just pacing up and down. And it just became normal that I was the sick one. But absolutely, there was that, like yourself, that history of antibiotics and just being unwell a lot.
Like when you say it just becomes normal pacing up and down the hall, like I lived in a bungalow too, and it
Oh,
got to the point where we had two toilets in the house, but the second toilet was just mine. And it's just how things become so normal. I remember pacing up and down the same hall, just one skinny little hallway up and down,
mm,
trying to pass whatever wind is trapped.
yeah.
And you just, I suppose you get on with it. It just becomes such a normal part. I had a diagnosis at the time. You
Mm.
obviously were thinking, what the hell is going on? Do you think when you first started presenting symptoms of IBD first, what age were you?
When I think back to those kind of traipsing up and down the hall episodes, I was probably 10, 11, 12. And I would say there was probably a level of anxiety with my mom, obviously having the family history, and she would have been concerned about it potentially being Crohn's. And as I got older myself, I was like concerned for myself, and I kind of probably started advocating quite young. Like, as I said, I saw a gastroenterologist firstly when I was about 16, and had a scope and everything was fine. And then again when I was 21, and then finally when I got my diagnosis in 2020, but definitely from about the age of 10, 11, 12. But it's quite a contrast, actually. My mom, when she would have gotten diagnosed, she never was sick a day in her life. Like, she's actually, I feel like, the exception to the rule. She literally remembers one day watching Coronation Street and suddenly needing to use the bathroom, and then it just didn't stop. Never sick a day in her life. So for her, it was more of a shock, if that makes sense. For me, I was like, yeah, okay, fine.
I knew something was going on, but it's good to get an answer. Yeah. And it's so funny, and it really sings to how individual IBD is that your mother could go from 100% to an IBD diagnosis. And whereas yourself and myself, the health issues were kind of, we were building them up along the way till we
Yeah.
got diagnosis. So it is just testament to how much of an individual experience it is. I suppose we've really focused on the IBD diagnosis there. I just want to touch on the MS diagnosis. Like that must have come as just such a kick after experiencing everything you've previously experienced, and then to get just another slap. Like, could you just dive into that diagnosis a bit for us?
Yeah, so I think I would actually say the MS diagnosis was harder because I was already down. It's like kicking a man when he's down. I just felt, it was only 2 years. It was kind of the end of 2021 when all this, trying to investigate if I had MS came about. I'd literally just found out in December 2020 that I had Crohn's. I was just settled on a treatment at the time. I was doing Amgevita. I had learned to inject. I was coming to terms as much as I could in that short space of time. Okay, I have Crohn's. I'm going to deal with this and live my life. And then it was like, oh, and by the way, here's another very, very serious condition that, on its own would be enough, never mind the complications of combining it with another, long-term autoimmune illness where the treatments for both are actually quite contradictory and clash with each other. So from, I suppose, a psychological point of view, the MS diagnosis hit me very hard. But I remember after officially getting it, and they hand you a little leaflet and it's like living with MS. And I was like, oh my God. And I came home and I just was like, I have to carry on because there must be some higher power. There must be some reason that I've been dealt these cards. And I remember on the day I started looking up people on social media that spoke about their MS diagnosis, as I had done previously with Crohn's. And I came across this girl and she had a story up, and it was, it doesn't get easier, you just get stronger. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember screenshotting and like setting that as my wallpaper the evening after coming back. And I was like, yeah. And I actually ended up getting it tattooed on my arm. And for me, that was the kind of piece that I was like, none of this will get easier. Like every day that I go for a scan and I find out bad news, or, it will never get easier, but I have to rise up above it and then just become stronger and learn to accept it and find the path, the right path for me, whether that be treatment or, whatever it might be. So yeah, that became my little mantra, but I would definitely say the second diagnosis hit twice as hard as the first.
I can only imagine. Like that's one burden, and then to get it doubled, tripled, and then you mentioned that the treatment for both can be contradictory. Like that must be a nightmare.
Oh, you have no idea. Like, so when I was diagnosed with MS, they were like, you need to stop your treatment for Crohn's immediately because now this is going to all get very sciencey. Again, I'm not a doctor, although my pictures would suggest otherwise. But yeah, so for anyone that's not watching me, I have degrees hung up behind me. So anti-TNF drugs actually can lead to further demyelination, which is what is MS essentially. It's a demyelinating condition where your myelin demyelinates. So I had to stop that. And then suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I've just got a new diagnosis. I'm now without treatment for my Crohn's. So there's two things just suddenly spiraling again. So it took a while to find a treatment for my Crohn's that would work and be okay to take alongside anything MS related. And then I suppose I was burying my head in the sand a little bit when it came to the MS diagnosis. I was like, right, I'm back on medication now for my Crohn's. I suppose at the time I was kind of like, look, things are stable enough with my MS. I'm not noticing too much. I won't start anything, just won't complicate things. And I kind of carried on against the advice, really. I carried on like that for about a year, and I started to get relapses and actually feel the effects of my MS. So then I said, right, we need to come up with a plan. And it was very complicated. There was 5, 6, 7 different treatments mentioned. None of them would suit. Eventually got to an oral medication, but unfortunately it didn't control. So I was still having relapses, so new lesions on scans. And I'm actually off my medication for MS now and due to start a new treatment in 2 weeks. But it comes at the risk of actually causing drug-induced colitis, and more so in patients that already have IBD. So you're like, it was funny, I was doing a bit of research and I came across actually a forum where a woman was in the exact same position. She was like, should I take this risk of potentially then flaring? And someone described it like, you need to deal with the shark closest to the boat. And it's like, which one is the pressing issue here? And it's so hard to weigh up because we know both conditions can cause very serious things. But I think for me at the moment, I'm like, right, I'll deal with the MS shark. And then if something arises for my Crohn's side, I'll battle that. But not to get too sciencey, it just does really complicate. One treatment is contraindicated with another. Yeah, like you would think, because I was reading a stat that actually by having IBD, your statistical risk, now it's not like a percentage, but whatever sciencey term, it's actually like a 50% greater chance of then actually developing MS as well, just by having IBD. Now it's not like 50% is in 50%, but you would think, considering that is quite likely, that there would be treatments. Now there is one that can treat both, but it wasn't suitable for me for other reasons. So I've become a pharmacist in my spare time, really, to make a little bit light of it. But you have to just research and educate yourself as much as you can, because even medical professionals don't fully understand my case. And I find it quite difficult for the two teams to communicate, because at the time I wanted to expedite my care from an MS point of view and I went private. But my care for my Crohn's is public, and it's quite difficult for public and private to speak. But equally, they look at you in silos, and it's such a problem I have, because we need to be looked at, no matter if it is just one chronic illness you have, or I'm not saying just, if it is one chronic illness you have, we need to be looked at from a multidisciplinary point of view. That's your gastroenterologist, for example, a dietitian, a psychologist. If there's issues with your joints, a rheumatologist, they all need to be sitting at the table and discussing you as a person combined. But very quickly you become Sarah who has Crohn's to like one team, and Sarah who has MS to another, but never Sarah who has MS and Crohn's. So I've become an expert at annoying doctors and secretaries and ringing and just trying to get some communication, but it's really, really hard.
That, like, to think that there's so many different complexities that you have to worry about together, and then thinking that the teams aren't connecting the dots, that must be beyond frustrating. And obviously having so many things that you have to worry about now, you find that stress is a factor and maybe aggravating the symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, stress is no good for anyone, and it's bad for both Crohn's and MS. It's bad for everything. And I find it's quite quickly that you would spiral. So for example, today I was speaking with my MS nurse, and she was like, oh, I'm still a bit concerned about starting this medication with your Crohn's. We'll really have to watch you closely. And then I put the phone down, and for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later, my mind is still there. Although I'm trying to get on with my day, I'm, quickly Googling something, or then I'm like, well, I haven't thought of this. And I'm jotting down thoughts that are flowing through my mind. And that's stress. That's not me actually being productive in researching or thinking. It's all these thoughts. And it affects then how you interact with people you meet throughout the day. Like I ate my dinner in silence today because I actually just feel overloaded a bit. I don't want to speak. So yeah, 100%. It's a huge stressor to constantly, my brain is never silent, I suppose, for want of a better word.
When you're describing what you have to experience on a daily basis, it sounds manic.
Yeah.
And then to think that you need just a little bit of time just to take a step back and have some silence. I imagine it's very hard to achieve that silence in your own mind. Like, do you practice any meditative, or how do you practice self-care to give yourself just the time out?
Yeah, great question. I've tried the usual kind of traditional routes of everyone says do yoga and do things like that. And for me, yoga was actually too quiet. I found now this is very individualized to everyone, but I needed something that actually kept my mind so busy or my body busy that there was no way a thought could creep in. So I was just saying before we start recording, I went to a circuits class this evening just before doing this, because like that today had just been one of those days and I was craving exercise weirdly. And I think it's actually maybe not even craving the actual physical act of the exercise, but it's going there and knowing I'm working around the different circuits. I don't have time because it's 40 seconds on, 20, 10 seconds off. I don't have time to think about all the calls I had today or the chasing I had to do or what's going to happen in 2 weeks when I start this treatment. So for me, it's things like that that keep the mind and the body in a way busy. But unfortunately, I can't always do that because my health doesn't always allow me to exercise. So it's so difficult to find the balance. So then it becomes things that are more easy, like reading a book or just even watching a really crappy show that is just like reality TV trash that you can just switch off. And I think it's about finding the balance and the thing that you need to distract you in a way based on how your body is at that point in time.
Completely get that. Like I find exercise and running, anything where I have to push my body to an extreme is the only time I feel a bit of peace where
Yeah,
the voices calm down.
yeah, yeah.
Like I recently read the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I'm butchering his second name, but essentially in that is that the only time the mind is at peace is when it's completely fully focused on the task at hand. So when you say that you use exercise as a form of, I suppose, meditation or a chance to calm the mind, do you, obviously with your health issues, do you find that sometimes you're drinking from an empty cup just to exist?
Absolutely. Like when I talk there about exercise and, trying to understand, well, can I actually exercise today? I think I'm guilty of pushing myself too far. Number one, to quieten my mind, but number two, to actually just feel normal. So I would find I push myself to be the same as everyone else, but at my own detriment. So whether that would be signing up to do 3 or 4 exercise classes in the week, knowing really I'm probably only able for 2 this week, or staying out late or trying to keep up to other people. And it has taken a while and I still do fall into that trap, but now I'm getting better at saying, no, I need to stop. I push myself too far. I've always been hard on myself, even prior to being sick, and it's carried over, but I am definitely trying to work on it. I would have a very type A personality. And again, there's links like of type A personality. Kill I'm a walking, like, this person's bound to get a chronic illness. Things would always have to be a certain way and planned within an inch of their life. And being sick takes planning and it just throws it on its head. And you can plan and it's nice to look ahead and think, oh yeah, I've this booked in and this planned. And then you mightn't be able to do it. And it hurts 100 times more. And you may still push yourself and try and do it. Like I remember I was going to Iceland. So I kind of made this bucket list whenever that happened. And one of them was, I definitely want to go to Iceland. And I was going in December and it was like -13 over there. And I was in the middle of what I now realize was an MS relapse. And I was sitting in A&E and it had the strangest symptom. It was a persistent itch that would never go away. And it was like all up the right side of my body, particularly around my chest. And at the time they thought potentially shingles, although I didn't have a rash. When I'm sitting in A&E due to fly at like 7 a.m. the following morning to Iceland. And I'm like, I have to get out of here. Like I'm going to Iceland. Now I did go and like I had lidocaine patches on me for the whole trip. But it was that worry and that fear of this is it, I won't be able to go. And I've created this bucket list to feel normal or to feel like I can achieve things. And now my illnesses are being like, well, actually, maybe you can't. And yeah, it's just such your mind just, it's so hard to deal with. Yeah.
That is, I completely get that. All know the things that we want to do and the things we want to achieve. And then our illness can kind of feel like it's robbing us of our potential or robbing us of what is our right to do. Obviously, it stands to your resilience that you're like, you know what, get the lidocaine on. I'm going on holidays no matter
Yeah.
what. Try and stop me.
Yeah.
And I think when you live life with a chronic illness, you develop this unbelievable resilience that nothing's going to stop you, nothing's going to get in the way. And how do you feel that has kind of shaped how you're living your life in a professional setting, social setting?
Yeah. So if I think back to before I was sick, like in college or even in secondary school, I mentioned I was very hard on myself, but I was very hard on myself to the detriment of probably enjoying myself and having a circle of friends or just living life. Like I would be in the library in college AM till it closed and maybe a little bit more if I could. And, yes, great. I have, strong degrees and I have my education, but I do feel I probably missed out on the social life. So for me then it was, oh, well, now college is finished. Let's go. And then suddenly I got sick. And then it definitely made me reevaluate the way I prioritize things and the way I live my life and the people and what's important. So I'm super lucky that I work and I work from home and I work full time, but I try not to push myself and I know my limits. I'll do my job and I'll do it absolutely to the best of my ability, but my job is just one part of my life. And I think it's about finding the outlets like exercise, or I've gotten really into jiving, so like country music and things that just, yeah, I've got a lot of
Becoming a
hobbies.
very
Strange.
popular mode of exercise these
Yeah,
days. I hear a lot of people
it's,
talking about it.
it's brilliant. But I think I prioritize those and I prioritize connections with people that fill my cup as well. Because, we hear about people that are kind of these energy vampires, and I'm already operating on a 1% battery, like plug me in quick. You want to surround yourself with people that support you and are trying to understand as best they can what's going on for you. And that also just, if you want to vent, they'll let you vent. Or if you just want to be like, today, I don't want to talk about it, we don't have to talk about it. So yeah, it's definitely shaped how I look at relationships, how I look at work-life balance as well. There's definitely a lot more life than there is work in terms of balance. And look, I think a lot of people are shifting in that direction regardless of health, because we realize we have one life and it's so important to live it. You never know what's around the corner, whether that be a chronic illness or something else. So yeah, I think it's shaped me positively in that regard, I would say.
Yeah, sounds like it, absolutely. And especially when you have a track record of receiving bad news, you're like, you know what? I'm living in the now. I'm going to advocate for myself. I'm going to just do what I have to do to make sure my life is as good as I can possibly have it. In the sense of relationships and work, invisible illness. I always say, thankfully, it's an invisible illness. I would hate for my Crohn's to be on my face because it would be just, there's no hiding it. There's no escaping from it. It's all encompassing. How do you, like, you look great, you look healthy. Do you feel when it comes to social settings and work settings that you have to nearly, if you decide, oh, I can't do that, do you have to prove to people that you do have an invisible illness?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. Absolutely. You'll always get the line of when you do tell someone that you're sick, but you look great. Geez, you're doing fantastic. And then you almost feel like, well, should I make myself not look okay? Like, should I walk into my appointments and just be like, I don't know, put grey makeup on? Like, it's
Right.
absolutely, I do feel you're almost trying to prove yourself. And I suppose with work, for example, I would often say like, oh God, I'm really tired. And they're like, "Ah, grab an early night." And I'm like, I went to bed at 8 o'clock last night. I slept for 12, 13 hours, and it's trying to explain to people, look, people don't get it until you've lived in that experience and you know what fatigue is, or you know what it's like to be sick. And I don't expect people to get it either. But I do feel then, because maybe people don't understand, you do have to kind of explain yourself a bit more. And I'm the worst at just being like, and this is why, and this is why, and this is why. And, I don't need to wrap myself up in it, because I think people should, at a basic level, just try and seek to understand. I think some of the initiatives that are really helpful are things like the sunflower lanyard. Like I've been using that in places like airports and public transport, and it just stops you, I suppose, having to explain, well, why have you taken that seat, or why are you maybe skipping ahead in the security queue, and things like that are super. Or like the no wait card from Crohn's and Colitis Ireland. So there is visible cues that we can use that almost explain without us having to explain. But also, I think I've learned to become a bit more unashamed about it. Like, yeah, you know what? I can't do that because I'm sick and I'm tired and I won't be able to commit to that. Um, when it comes to probably like cancelling on people and friendships and maintaining those, I would say at the start when you get unwell, people are like, oh, like, calling over and what can I do? What can I help? And then when they realize this is my life forever, it's kind of like, oh, okay. And I totally get that, because there's going to be moments in my life where I am just really down and I'm venting and I'm throwing all this emotion at people that I don't know what to do with and they don't know what to do with. And it's really difficult then for someone to take that. And I find that's where things like going to counselling or speaking to someone external are super helpful, because like I would find when I was first diagnosed with both conditions, I was throwing a lot of this really negative headspace at my mum. And already there was going to be a sense of guilt there with my mum and feelings that she was trying to address. And suddenly I'm thrown at, oh, I can't go on like this. And it would just be a passing comment. I probably wouldn't even think about it, 10 minutes later, but then it's on her mind for days on end. So I think that's where speaking to someone that's just removed from it, you might not be looking for them to provide you with a solution, but you can just kind of dump all your baggage and then be like, I'll see you next week. Thank you. And you don't feel like you're burdening someone that's very close with you that wants to help but can't help. So yeah, I would definitely recommend speaking to someone probably external as well.
Completely. I would be an absolute advocate for counseling. The fact that we can make, I suppose, offhand comments like that. My mother is always the one who gets to the berating of the ear. And I would say probably stupid things. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing this shit anymore. Oh, I can't keep putting up with this. And whereas I'm just like, oh, it's out now and I've forgotten about it. I go about my day. As you said, it's probably something she is thinking about. And that's the fear, is when you start realizing the words that come out of your mouth, you don't want to be burdening the people around you with the problems. And going to counseling, speaking to someone who's completely detached from your situation is such an empowering moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've had the same experience, but for me, first counselor I went to, I walked out of being like, they need counseling more than I need it.
Yeah. There was a few I was like, no, like what?
Oh, completely. And like, how many times did you go to a few different practitioners? Was it lucky maybe the second or third one you found out?
Yeah. So what happened with me was during COVID, I was pretty quick to the mark being like, I need to speak with someone. I don't want to be burdening people around me. And I did like over the phone counseling. And it was so strange because I never saw this woman and she was so lovely. And I spoke with her. We did, I think, 8, 9 sessions, maybe once a week. But it was very much focused on, okay, what will I do when I go out to eat in a restaurant now? Or, how will I find someone like a boyfriend? What's this going to mean? It was very, I suppose, questions that were just arising there and then. It probably wasn't more longer term thought. And then I let it digest over a little bit more time. And I did go, I think I went about 2 or 3 more. And I think it's very difficult to find a counsellor that specifically deals with grief, I suppose, is the word that we're looking for here. Because this is a grief. It's a grief for the life that you had before, what could have been. So it is quite hard to find someone that gets it.
For someone who's been just diagnosed with IBD, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. First one is join up with Crohn's and Colitis Ireland. I think it's an invaluable source of information. Now, typically when you're getting diagnosed, they're going to hand you a little booklet that is going to be branded with Crohn's Colitis Ireland. That will be your handbook, particularly for people that may have never heard of it before, which is quite common. Again, this was in my experience. I was lucky in that I had, lucky, and I'm using inverted commas here, a close family relative that I could talk to and I knew about it. But if it's literally your first time hearing about it, use that really as your source of truth. And, associate with the do not wait card, look at all the resources that are there for you and connect in. I would say just be kind to yourself. Like, this is a huge moment. It's a huge life-changing moment. And I think you won't probably realize the gravity of it for another couple of months, couple of years. It could take a while, depending on what kind of where you're at with the severity of your illness. So just let that sink in and be really, really kind to yourself. I would say try and get the people around you to educate themselves, or, be the person who will speak to them and educate them, because it's going to be really important to have a support network around you and people that want to be there, that want to understand and want to help. Or if you're just like, not today, I don't need anything, just be there for me. I would say be careful as well in terms of where you're getting your information. There is so much information out there. Like, the second you put Crohn's or ulcerative colitis into Google, you have thousands and thousands of results. So just be sure that you are reading something that's legit. There are some great like support groups out there on Facebook, for example. Like, I had joined, I think, Women with IBD, and there's a Women with MS group as well for my MS. And like, people will tell their stories there. I would say probably hold off maybe a little bit enjoying those, because typically when someone's coming to those groups, it is with quite a negative or quite a scary story, because we seek support and we seek guidance from people in similar situations when we're at our lowest, mostly. So just be careful in what you're seeing there. Make sure that you have a really good relationship with your GP. I'm really lucky that my GP now is just fantastic. She's been like there for me from the very, very start. I come to her with so many questions and so many crazy stories, but she's always there and fighting in my corner. And your GP will be your point of contact for a lot of different things, for future referrals, whatever it might be. So make sure you trust them, and that they're there for you. Um, and yeah, I think just things will change. It is something obviously that will be there for the rest of your life, but I think we have to look at it positively as well. There's so many great people out there like yourself and that are talking online and showing that, I know you're blushing, that,
I'm always blessed.
we can live our lives. Yes, things might have to change a little bit, but you will get there and you will achieve what you want to achieve. It's not the end. It's just the start of something new, as cliched and as corny as that sounds.
I mean, no, amazing. And every word out of your mouth is even inspiring me. I'm like, yeah, wow, that's great. Absolutely. Like, you're an unbelievable advocate for IBD. And I'm sure with MS, like, I'm not going to, assume, but I'm sure there are a lot of similarities when it comes to doing your research and signing up with the appropriate societies.
Definitely. I think for some reason with MS, you get more negative stories when you tell people you have it. Look, I've had numerous people kind of come up to me and tell me very negative stories the second I tell them I have it. I think it's fair. They want to share what, if they have a relative or they knew someone and they want to share too. But I think it's just about kind of saying, I actually maybe don't want to talk about that right now, or just blocking it out and thinking, look, not everything is going to be worst case scenario. I would say with MS, and actually probably equally for IBD as well, if you can connect in with someone that's kind of been there, done that, has the t-shirt, someone that's lived with it for maybe 10, 15, 20 years. Again, everyone's stories are hugely different with whatever condition it might be, but they can just give you that little guide in terms of how it felt for them when they were first diagnosed versus 5 years down the line versus where they're at now. And that's something I did for my MS. I actually met with a man who had it for about 10, 15 years. And we sat and we had a coffee and we were sitting there for hours, and we both cried at different points in time. But it was just so, so helpful to see that lived experience. And particularly for me, because MS was more of an unknown, it was just such an education and a positive spin on things versus maybe some of the more negative things I'd been seeing. But I would say, yeah, for both, the kind of advice is similar. Get the support with MS Ireland, for example, with MS. Look for the supports online, and really get that community around you and engage with those different meetups. For me, I probably more dipped into that from an IBD point of view. I would say half my face is maybe still in the sand from an MS point of view, but it will emerge eventually. For some reason, that one has just taken a little bit more of getting used to. And I will in time engage more with the kind of groups there, because there's fantastic groups and it's probably more recognised. It's definitely more funded, and it's, for example, MS is recognised as a long-term illness. There's probably more that comes with MS. So yeah, that'd be my guidance on it.
One thing I want to talk about is the impact financially. Recently, Crohn's Colitis Ireland released the financial impact of IBD survey, and I know you have been an excellent promoter of that survey. You met with was it one of the independent counsellors?
So Fine Gael, Joe Cooney and
That's
Claire.
right.
So yeah, look, I think we really need to realise that chronic illness comes with huge financial implications. I was saying there, MS is recognised as a long-term illness. Therefore, you get long-term illness card. Any treatments, any medications are covered on that scheme. Crohn's and colitis is just like, oh, sorry, just go fork out there for everything. And it's obviously the medication costs, it's the GP visits, it's everything. GP visit cards and medical cards are still means tested. It's not fair. It's absolutely not fair. There's the hidden costs as well. There's things like the parking in hospitals, the alternative therapies that we're doing to try and help improve our lives. Even something, I was actually thinking about it recently because I was doing an interview about the survey. Something like you might do your food shop at the start of the week. All good intentions. I'm going to have a salad on Tuesday. I'm going to have steak. And then suddenly you get unwell and everything's thrown out. And it's those things, yeah, like I can't eat a salad. Like what? What am I thinking? So it's those things. And like everything we're doing, supplements, we're trying our best, but it's so expensive. And so absolutely, there's huge strides that we have to come. I really do hope in time we're looking at Crohn's and colitis as long-term illnesses. We're looking at financial supports. I don't know how long it's going to take, but all we have to do is just keep beating that drum and hope that somebody listens to us.
Completely. We just have to keep advocating for ourselves, because it is so expensive being sick. And when you're sick, you feel like you're almost in a vulnerable position, because you are limited in how much you can work. It's all decided by how well you feel on a certain week, and it can impact your career progression, wage progression, all that sort of stuff. So it's very frustrating that a lot of your money from your wage packet will go on just trying to exist and feel good during the week, when it should be going towards maybe your holiday and stuff like that. So it is very frustrating, that sort of sense. So fingers crossed now, over the next period, we'll call it, I won't put a time frame on it, sooner rather than later, that we'll get the supports that we need to allow us to exist in the world. Because MS is already recognised on the long-term illness scheme, how do the two of them interact? I know with the medication you were saying there might be one coming up that would treat both. Do you find, because luckily, and I say that to be honest, that one of the issues you're dealing with is on the long-term illness scheme, has that eased a lot of the burden that you've been feeling?
Yeah, I think so. It's firstly financially, but I think secondly, it's like somebody actually recognizes me as being sick. I think living with Crohn's and colitis, because and MS, they're all invisible illnesses. You're like, well, no one really knows. Nobody knows I'm going through. They don't get it. But almost having this card in my wallet is like, look, it's true. There's actually something going on. I know that sounds ridiculous, but absolutely, there's the financial aspect of, like, I know my injections are going to be ordered. I'm going to be starting with my loading dose in 2 weeks. They're going to be sitting on that high-tech system for free. I can get them. And I don't take that for granted. Like, that is incredible. Like, if you look at the American health system, for example, it's frightening. So no, there's absolutely the financial aspect, but there's just the being recognized. And, with MS, there comes things like, if in time cars needed adaptation or your house needed adaptation for your ability to do things, there is grants and there's schemes there. With Crohn's, it's almost like, oh, well, sorry, like, it's just a dodgy tummy. Like, we don't really see anything that can be done. Sorry. So no, I think it's recognition and it's financial as well.
IBD seems to be minimalized, and like no one I feel like there's an unwillingness to accept the gravity of what it actually is.
Yeah.
And I suppose by sharing our stories on social media, that's the only way that we can generate the awareness and hopefully get these supports. You yourself have shared your story on social media. What's been your experience about being open and sharing what's going on with the world, we'll call it?
Yeah, so I made the decision actually just literally the day after getting my colonoscopy that diagnosed me. Maybe I was still a little bit high on fentanyl, who knows? But I had taken this like picture before I went in for the colonoscopy. I was all masked up because it was COVID. I'd like my thumb up, and I just blabbed it all out and I posted it. And then I was like, it was more, I think, I just want people to know, and then everyone will stop asking questions and they'll know why things have changed for me. And then as time went on, I started doing a little bit more content, like actual videos talking about it, and I'd update people. But there probably came a point where I was like, I questioned if I should do it. And for kind of a couple of reasons. I suppose, firstly, I didn't want people feeling sorry for me. I suppose I was finding like a lot of relatives or people that I would have gone to school with were like, "Oh my God, like you're so brave, you're so strong," and then you're like, that feels a
Yeah.
bit uncomfortable. Yeah, yeah. Ugh.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So there was that. And then this is probably a very vain one, but I was doing a lot of videos and things on TikTok, and I was like, wait a minute, I won't get a boyfriend if I'm doing this. Like they're not going to want me. I'm like, and then I remember thinking that thought process, and I was like, but wait a minute, if they don't want me, like these illnesses are me, like I'm like they're part of me. They're what's going to be there forever, and they'll have to deal with them if they're with me. So if I'm posting a video about it on social media and they have a problem, they're not for me. So I
I
would say
heard
I'd put
just on that point. I don't. Sorry to interject, but I remember a guy, Sean Francis, said to me. He said, "Those who those who care won't matter, and those who matter won't care." And that just summed it up for me because I 100% like having an ostomy bag. And the first things that came into my mind was, no girl's ever going to want me. I'll be disgusting, etc., etc., etc. It's a very hard thing to feel because obviously we all want normal, happy lives, fairy tales, all that sort of stuff. And when that is blocked by something you're experiencing, which is so harrowing and so tough and all encompassing in your life, and then for it to be such a block on something that is just such a normal thing that you're supposed to be allowed to experience, it's very hard. And the fact that you are being so open about that and sharing it so openly, I know it's a great thing for anyone who might be going through the same thoughts to think like, well, this girl has gone through that and look at the life she's living. She
yeah.
is happy out, smashing it. It's a great thing that you do being so open about it.
I say I really don't care what people know about me, like as in regard of my health. Like I talk so openly because if it just makes one person feel more comfortable, like for example, I was going through a recent flare, and they prescribed me rectal foam. So you know, you got your little canister, you put your thing on, and then and when I first started doing it, like I'm my boyfriend and I was like, I'll do it, and I'll call you when you can come in then, okay? And I did this for the first couple of nights, and then I was like, no, do you know what? This is silly. Like he's waiting, he's hearing the shh, and then he's able to walk in the door. So no, I just started doing it. Like he'd be watching Netflix, he'd be doing whatever, and I'd be like, I'm just going to do it now. I've got to lie on my left side, like whatever. And I think if we just normalize this, that we all have these body parts. Just unfortunately, I may put foam up there every now and again. And we all go to the toilet. You know, there will be times when all of us are dealing with things that aren't comfortable. But if the person cares about you enough, doing that, you know, once a night for a couple of weeks or a couple of months to deal with something that's happening in your life for the better outcome of making you better really won't matter. So no, I'm hugely open about it because if one person can feel, well, tonight I will do a suppository, a rectal foam, an enema in front of my partner, well then good for you, because it really isn't something to be ashamed of. It's for your good and it's for the good of your relationship, because once you're healthy, you can enjoy your life with them as well.
Completely. It's the things that you have to do to make both of your lives better. When you're healthy, you can obviously go and enjoy life and do things. And these, I know they might not be glamorous, but it's just a necessity of what you have to do to get through life and have a good life.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that you're so open about like that is just, I know the word inspiring is bandied about so much, but it is. And to hear you just so confidently speaking that is an amazing thing because there's nothing glam about it. I remember taking enemas and all that stuff. And it's just, it's a lot to be dealing with. And fair play to you. I appreciate you being so open about it.
I think as well, in a way, with so many procedures and so many doctors looking at you and doing all these sort of things, you kind of, in a way, detach that a little bit, I think, from who you are. Like taking treatments or having to go for scopes or having someone, unfortunately, put a finger where you don't want it to be because they're checking you out. You kind of detach yourself a bit from it. And it's just, this is my health and it's something I have to do for a better outcome. And then I can just carry on my day. Or you kind of make a joke about it. Like, I think all of us with chronic illnesses just have a really sick sense of humor, and you have to laugh about it and move on. So no, I think, look, the more we can normalize this, and if it means that, you know, even if we talk about the fact that For example, blood in the toilet was one of my first symptoms. If it means that someone that sees blood doesn't hold off in telling, because it is hard to go in, and it can be when you've never had experience of talking about your body in such a way, to tell someone, well, actually, I'm seeing blood. And like, even I remember when I first started seeing it, I made this thing of like, I'm going to take a picture of that to show, and I did. And it actually was super helpful in expediting the care and being like, this is what's actually happening. Like, look. So yeah, you wouldn't want to see my gallery on my phone.
Likewise, likewise.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Someone gets my phone, I'm like, no. They're like,
No, yeah, yeah.
you've dirty pictures. I'm like, dirty in a different way, maybe. But
Yeah.
well, and that's just one thing also as well. I suppose with everything you've experienced, do you track? Do you diary? Do you journal?
Yeah. So again, the type A personality comes into play here. So when I was first diagnosed, I think I probably did it a little bit too much. I would definitely recommend tracking symptoms and what you're eating and different bits, but don't let it interrupt your life and your living. And I think I was at the start. So I was tracking what I was eating, how I was feeling after every meal, what my bowel movements were like, what my symptoms were like. And then I was really trying to match up, what did I do that led to this? I've definitely pulled back on that. It was actually a dietitian that kind of said to me, I think this is a little bit too much. Like, try not doing it for a week or two and see how you feel. And it was me, I think, trying to get control on an uncontrollable aspect of my life at the time. So I do at the moment still, I would track, like I use an app, I think it's PCAL, it's called. And
Cool.
there's another one as well. The name escapes me that I was using at another point in time, but you can track your bowel movements, you can track your symptoms, and it just kind of gives you an indication of what's the pattern been over the last few weeks and months. I don't track as much what I'm eating because I kind of know now what triggers me and what doesn't, so I'm able to manage that. But from an MS point of view, I just kind of use the notes app on my phone. I'm sure there's probably an app that does track symptoms there, but I just kind of note them down. And I think it's more just that if things are starting to get worse, you have it there for your doctor to tell them. And I will still use the camera if things start escalating or I see something unusual, and I know then I can show them. But yeah, I think to be careful a little bit in how much you track, because unfortunately it can become a little bit obsessive because
Yeah.
you are really grappling to control your life.
Oh, completely. I get a bit neurotic at these things sometimes, and I'm
Yeah,
like, oh my
yeah,
God, calm down. I need someone to say to me, like, put the phone away. You don't need to jot down every,
yeah.
thing you just experience on a plate. We just touched on diet there. Do you IBD? I know from my own experience, there are certain foods which are triggers. With MS, do you find that diet has any impact?
It's a really tough one because what they would say is good for MS for me is bad for my IBD. So again, no more than
Of
medication.
course.
Yeah, yeah, honest to God, like come on. No more than medication clashing. Food is the same. Things like your legumes, your salads, your nuts, your seeds, your fruit, your veg, like hugely promoting that from an MS point of view. But if I even look at a plate of nuts or a plate of seeds, like I know all about it. Now,
Yeah.
I know my limits in terms of like if a couple of seeds sneak in, or one or two strawberries, but that's where I draw the line. And I would say I probably fell into the pattern of maybe being not ultra processed, but quite processed food to try and just control things from a Crohn's point of view. So your white breads, your white pasta, and then you become a little bit nervous to move beyond that. And I do try and test myself and push the boundaries a little bit because I want to have a healthy diet. And I know it's definitely recommended when we're not flaring to try and eat as diverse as we can. So yeah, from an MS point of view, I'm probably not ticking all the boxes there, but I am getting better in expanding food from an IBD point of view and not fearing fiber, which a lot of us do because it does become scary when you're flaring. Yeah, you don't want fiber. You're like, yeah,
Like I've gone to the extremity of going full carnivore diet for 3 months, and where it
yeah.
gave me the alleviation of symptoms. I know from speaking to other IBD sufferers, they can't even look at red meat or they'll be flaring. So it is very individual in that sense, but you yourself are navigating a genuine minefield. Like that is a very tough path to be on. When it comes to navigating that tough path, have you gone to seek, like, have you gone to a specific nutritionist for both individually, or have you gone down that route?
I haven't actually. I suppose I've always been a little bit cautious of that just because, again, it is so individualized from an IBD point of view. I would have done low FODMAP. That was the only kind of thing I properly experimented with. I went to a dietitian when I was first diagnosed, and it actually just made me so sad. I would go into the supermarket and I'd be in there so long checking all the labels and like, I can't have that, I can't have that. And I think I was just kind of more now, I intuitively eat. I know what I can and can't eat. I can almost, like, if I have a salad, for example, today, I'm like, right, for the next 2 days now, I'll pull back a little bit and rebalance and not have as much fiber. Or if I'm feeling particularly bad, I know, okay, definitely won't do that this week or I won't chance that. So I'm definitely getting more intuitive and learning to just listen to my body and what it's craving and calling out for. But yeah, I haven't probably explored actually speaking to someone about it. Even from a supplement point of view, I think that's something I'd probably like to explore a bit more because there's so much contradictory evidence in terms of supplements that you should take and shouldn't take, and even how they can interact with medication. And things that are immune boosting are actually quite bad if you have an autoimmune condition. But yeah, I've been kind of looking into that more so just a bit of personal research, but I think, yeah, probably getting the professional advice will be helpful.
Completely. And just in that sort of sense, is there any supplements that you have taken personally that you find are a great thing for giving you energy to kind of get you through your sort of day? I know it's a bit of a minefield kind of deciding you need to make sure they don't interact with your medication and IBD versus MS. Is there anything that you've taken at the minute that you're thinking, oh, that's a good one I've started?
Yeah, so for me, actually, it was probably iron. So I've been lucky that my iron has never dipped crazy low, but it was starting to dip a bit, and I was definitely feeling it from an energy point of view. It wasn't low enough to warrant an infusion or anything. But I knew iron is quite tough on the digestive system. So I heard about active iron. It was actually from someone else that had IBD. And I've been really finding active iron brilliant. No effects on my digestion. And I definitely have noticed my energy increase. So I would say iron, and I would do vitamin D as well. Like we're all low in vitamin D, and there's some research to suggest it's helpful from an MS point of view. Like I've dabbled a little bit in different ones, but I think yeah, it's easy to suddenly take loads and then really you're just peeing it all out because you don't need some of it. So I think suddenly I look and like my pee is like highlighter yellow. Yeah. So and I've started like I do take probiotics as well. Again, there's limited research. Crohn's versus ulcerative colitis, should we, shouldn't we? I
Mm.
take the Simprove and I've recently started doing Moss Boss tonic. So it's like a sea moss tonic. I've actually found that really helpful. So there's different ones for different things, but I'm taking one with like a cherry extract before bed, and it's good for like winding down and sleep. So they're kind of my go-tos at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great to hear recommendations of people who have taken certain products because there's so much on the market out there. And the more you look into supplements, a lot of them you might as well be just taking a placebo for all the actual
Yeah.
nutrition that's in them. But just earlier on, you touched on some alternative therapies that you've tried. Is there any that you find have really helped you?
Yeah, for me, it's actually been massage. Actually, from both points of views. I suppose, firstly, from an MS point of view, you do get kind of just the aches and pains and the tightness and the stiffness. So it's really good for that. Now I'm talking more about like a holistic massage. Just from a general relaxation point of view as well. And even just from a Crohn's point of view, I find when I'm stressed or I'm worried or things aren't good, I'm just super, super tense. And I've actually noticed after a lot of those holistic massage sessions, there's almost kind of like purge is a bit of an extreme word, but I would definitely notice actually an increase that evening, for example, in some of my IBD symptoms. And then they would settle kind of following that. And I've spoken to the practitioner and she was like, I actually am not surprised because she's just working so much through and moving so much that it can happen. And so I definitely recommend, big believer in like a holistic massage from all angles. And I do that about once a month. There's so much more I'd love to try. I think it just comes down to, again, the expense point of view and also trying to balance up. Is it worth it from a cost point of view, from research benefits, and like things like craniosacral, I'd love to try, reflexology. But it's like, would I like to spend this money on a holiday? So there's so much more. And look, I think, for example, some health insurance companies are getting better with recognizing some of those and actually, giving you money back. But it's still quite hard to find the ones that do.
Yeah, and you always want to get a recommendation of a practitioner in the sense that you hate throwing good money away on a win because
Yeah.
if you're very frustrated and you don't feel you're actually getting a result from your spending your €100, €80, that's a couple of hours work. Like it's very tough, and you have so much, so many other places. Sorry, I'm batting a fly away here. There's so many other places you can actually spend that money. So
Yeah.
it's great to get that insight. I am a massive advocate of craniosacral therapy. That
Mm.
woman has been my guru and my lifesaver in a conversation way and also in the craniosacral sense. Like she's just been amazing. Flexology is one I am really looking forward to actually trying.
Oh.
It's something that definitely I have done a good bit of research into in the effect of just total body wellness, and it seems to be a really, really good one. You mentioned before that you had an understanding of what IBD was from your mother's experience. As a daughter, seeing your mother suffering with IBD, how did that kind of shape your life and your whole perspective on that?
Yeah, so I suppose as a young child, I didn't necessarily understand exactly what was going on. I just knew that she didn't have as much energy, that she was losing weight, that she was unwell, and that I knew the second we would pull in the gate, she needed to get to the bathroom first, and that was hers, and that was it. And I think over time, then, as I probably got into my teenage years, I realized the severity and the seriousness because in 2012, she had her large bowel removed and an ileostomy. And it was probably at that stage, I think I was in about TY at that point in time, that it kind of dawned on me. I was sitting actually in business class and I was texting my aunt to see how she was. And someone was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm texting my aunt. Like, my mum had surgery." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Oh, like she's had her large bowel removed." I think as I actually said it to someone, I was like, "Oh, wow, that's actually really serious." And it was only then it probably dawned on me, all the years of her suffering and just being so strong and not letting the mask slip and not letting it affect how she got on with her day. And like the dinner was always served, I was always picked up from school, like no matter what it was done. So then I think when it led on to my diagnosis, I was kind of like, at first, I was very much like, I can't do this. I remember ringing her up and being like, I can't do this. And then it just felt like such a kick in the teeth to her because she had done it. She'd done it since 1999 and was absolutely owning it and never let it stop her. And then I remember actually calling her up after and being like, "Sorry, like I shouldn't have said that. I don't mean it. Like, I will do it. It was that in that moment."
Yeah, yeah.
And I suppose we've never probably openly said, how do you feel that I now have Crohn's? Because they do say there's like a 3% chance if one of your parents have it. And I'm like, great. I'm one of those 3%. And since we've kind of found out that some other of my mom's relatives actually have it as well. So there is definitely a genetic component for me. And a lot of people ask me, "Oh, are you going to have kids? And what does it mean if you have kids?" And it's a really tough question because pre my diagnosis, my mom would have said, "God, if I knew I had Crohn's, like I was going to get Crohn's, I wouldn't have had, I'm an only child, like I wouldn't have had children." And that line does rattle around in my head. And it's definitely led me at times to think I probably shouldn't. But then I think if I do, I know that I can be their best and their biggest advocate and I can guide them through it. Like I'll literally have, I'll have had a childhood of growing up with someone who has it and then I'll have had my own experience. And I just think I will fight for them endlessly. I would hate obviously if my child unfortunately did, because I just think it's such it's such a tough illness. But you can be strong and I can help them through. I would say getting the diagnosis and having someone there living with someone that had it was helpful, but it was also tough at times because everything I was going through was stirring up her emotions and her past and her thinking. And I think we clashed a little bit because she might say, "Oh, well, for me, this happened." I'm like, "It's about me. Like, it's about me this time." And
Yeah.
we maybe still a little bit clash on that because we all want to share our own stories. And when two people come together that have the same condition on paper, although it might be different, you do want to say, "Well, this worked for me or this happened to me." But it has been helpful just from actually getting her to speak more openly as well. Like she's attended some of the patient days with Crohn's and Colitis Ireland and the meetups. And actually probably, I know the way you refer to it as being your kind of dirty secret for years. It would have been like that for mom. And now it's like, no, actually, I do have it. And even I've gotten her the sunflower lanyard and she'll go to the airport and she'll wear it. And like, "Oh, this is great." It's actually been positive for her, I think, to accept it a bit more as well and for her to be open and talking about it. And like, I'll, do interviews or I'll talk as well. And I think it's really nice for her to hear that it's okay. Like, I don't hold there's no way that I ever would blame my mother for this at all in a million years. There's no feelings of anything like that. And I think that how strong she was when I was growing up. And if I can be half as strong as that as I go on in my Crohn's journey, then I'll be delighted.
Yeah, like your mum, I met her at the CCI, oh, the patient day that day.
Yeah.
Like, what a gem! Like, and forgive me if I'm wrong. Was her surgery December 2012?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking there's a month between when we had our surgeries.
Yeah. Yeah. She loves you. She's always like, "Jonathan came up on my TikTok. I haven't seen Jonathan on TikTok in a while. Where's Jonathan?" So she
She's
loves your
sick of
content.
looking at this face. No, an absolute gem. And as you said, it's such a balance of two people in the same house experiencing it because obviously when you started going through it, it must have brought up so much for her. And as in a maternal instinct, I'm sure there was a guilt. Like my mother speaks about the guilt. She
Mhm.
didn't have Crohn's herself, but she felt such guilt that I did. And it's just a very tough thing. Like I know myself when it comes to the genetic component, this major fear. But it's always something like these things, they just stick in the back of your mind the first time you hear them.
Yeah.
And it's a very hard thing. It's no matter what, it will guide decisions that you make in your life. And it's something that I think the more we are open about it, and as you said, you will advocate and you will understand and you'll know everything about it. And there's a real power in that statement, like, because we all need people to advocate for us, but we can't let it stop our lives. And the hope is that obviously in the future, science will come in and be like,
Yeah.
boom, bye
Yeah.
bye phones. And that's the dream. That's the dream that's ahead of us, hopefully. But no, it's amazing that you can share that and have that very special perspective on what it's like to grow up with a parent with it. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem. And I think as well, it's interesting to the questions that people come up with when they hear you're chronically unwell. I think that's such an interesting insight. Like somebody said to me, they're like, "What if you're sick on your wedding day?" And that line has stuck with me for like, I'm not getting married, like, but it's stuck with me. And I'm like, but I will be. Like, I actually, technically, I definitely will be. Or like, what if your child gets this? Or should you have children? And I think if it's a lesson, it's just be careful what you're saying to people, because it's the negative that will always stick in your mind. Like, someone might say to me, like, God, you're doing a great job. I've forgotten about that 2 minutes later, but I'm still remembering the fact that I might be sick on my wedding day. So I think definitely getting chronically sick, or, being chronically ill, has made me think about how I speak to people in general now. I mean, we can never assume, if someone's losing weight, don't comment on weight. I think Ireland in particular has such a fascination with people's weight. And it's like, just stop. Like, you don't know what's going on in that person's life, and it's none of your business anyway. And I think we just need to learn to bite our tongue a little bit. Or, some other times I might leave like the salad behind on my plate, and someone's like, why are you not eating that? And I remember one time I was so sick. I was like, I'll see it in the toilet tomorrow. And I was just like, mic drop, done.
Shut down, get out of
Yeah,
here.
yeah. And I don't want to become this bitter person. But, I just think if I wanted to deliver one message to people that are looking in on the lives of people with chronic illnesses, just be careful what you're saying. Like, strive to understand and strive to not comment exactly what you're thinking. Like, if I look terrible, maybe don't tell me. Or like, my favorite one is like, geez, you looked terrible there a couple of weeks ago. Okay, thanks.
Sound,
Nothing I
I
can
was
do
looking at
about it.
myself here in the mirror, don't worry.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that that's such a great point, because I thought a lot of people don't comprehend the words that come out of their mouth. I know I've definitely been, someone who has done that before, is where you say a sentence, not really thinking of what that might trigger in someone else's thought process. So I suppose being very conscious about the words we use is something to really take away from it. I am 100%, I always put my foot in my mouth all the time, but I've also had people put their foot in their mouth with me. And when that kind of happens, I kind of just have to smile and say, "Do you know what? They don't understand the weight of what they've said." And when I put myself in that sort of thing, I can just say, all right, I'm definitely triggered up here, but I'm just
Yeah.
like, you know what? They didn't know what they were saying. I'm going to let them go with this one. But if they say it again,
Yeah. No, me and mom compare things now. We're like, and this person said to him, what did they say to you? And then we just laugh about it, and it's fine.
yeah, that's it. And humor is 100% an amazing coping mechanism that I think everyone with chronic illness develops, because you just have to. It gets to the point where you're like, my life's a joke. I'm just going to laugh at it, because the other option is I'm going to cry.
Yeah, literally, like the amount of health professionals, and they're like, how are you still, like at one point my GP was like, how are you still going? And I was like, just laughing it off. Like, there's nothing else I can do. Like,
Because even the way you tell all this story today, you say it with such gumption, it's such passion, and it is, I know I've said use the word inspiring, and I really want to find a better word than inspiring, but it is amazing to see, and it's just so refreshing, because I know in our own moments at home, we don't have this mask that we put on when we go and speak to the world. It's just an amazing thing that you can come on and share your story so openly, and give it as a guide to other people. It's a great thing you can do.
thank you. I think for me, speaking in a silly way, it's kind of what keeps me going a little bit. It gives me that purpose and that drive, that if, as I said, if what I can tell helps one other person, or it just makes someone have a laugh at me, think, oh, Jesus, she has it rough. Just something. Because otherwise, I'm going to sit at home and just get, like, there will obviously be moments, there's always ups and downs, and there's a lot more downs than there is ups. But it's about rising up and then just using that down period to be like, here's the story. Maybe it will help someone. And yeah, like I could talk and talk, and any opportunity I said that I get at the start to get on my soapbox, like I think it's so important that we have these people that are willing to talk. And for people that maybe are living in secret and don't want to talk about it, or are worried and don't know anyone, they can listen to us and be like, yeah, I relate to that, or well, at least there's someone else, because it's that herd mentality, or it's my tribe, as we kind of were talking about earlier. It's finding your tribe, and it's the chronic illness tribe. And even if it isn't IBD you have, or MS, or whatever, just knowing that we get the fatigue, we get the judgment, we get the endless list of things, and you're absolutely not alone. And just tap into all the great resources and the people that are telling their stories in a positive way.
Completely. And I always make this very High School Musical comment, like we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Every time I say it, I'm like, you cringy. But anyway, it is so true. And the fact that you can come on and share your story and give someone else a bit of hope and a bit of insight into how things go, it's a great thing to be able to do. And the more we share our lived experience, the more we can make it easier on everyone else. And it's good to get the opportunity to do it.
Absolutely. And thank you for letting me giving me, I suppose, the platform as well to do it. So thank you.
My absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Sarah. So, Sarah, you've given an amazing insight into what it's like to live with not just one, but two chronic illnesses. Just to recap on everything we've gone through today, is there any advice that you'd really like to share or get a point across to sum up what we've spoken about today?
There's so many. I mean, I could continue for God knows how much longer talking, but I think it's just the piece of things will be okay. I feel like I've said so many ridiculous statements today, but you will be in a dark space. Look, that is the reality, unfortunately. When anyone is dropped into a chronic illness diagnosis, it's a hugely dark, lonely place. Even if, for example, on my way, I had my mom alongside me, it was still lonely because it was my experience. It was new, it was unique, it was different, and I was going through that by myself largely. But you will emerge from it. It will take time. It's not going to be a linear, things are better and they're going to stay better forever. There unfortunately will be ups and downs. And it is one of the hardest things to deal with, is that unpredictability and the ups and the downs, and things could be going really, really well and then suddenly it all falls flat on its face again. But you will come back stronger each time that you fall. You'll learn something new. You might then move on to find someone to talk to, and actually it makes their life easier when they're going through it, and you will find the purpose in it all. I don't know why all this group of people that we've been chosen to carry this load of chronic illnesses. Unfortunately, it's something that's becoming far more common across the world. And in a way, I hope, I suppose, that will actually lead to more understanding, to just a better support network and a better understanding from governments, from health systems, whatever it might be, that chronic illness now, unfortunately, is just something that is part of our society in a much bigger way. And all we want to do is contribute to society, be a part of society, have the necessary things to help it along, whether that be our long-term illness cards or financial supports if we can't work. Just help us and we'll help you. And branding us as if we're like a group that's like living in space or
Gang, gang.
something. But yeah, but no, like it is going to be hard. There's no point in sugarcoating it. There's going to be sometimes more bad days than good, particularly in the early days. But find what makes things better for you and what pulls you out of those bad days. And it might be, as we've touched on, speaking to a counsellor. It might be finding people online to connect with. It might be going for an exercise class or just watching trash on TV. Whatever it is that lifts you, because it might be a bad moment, but it's not a bad life. And you can find the good in it.
That's an amazing one. It might be a bad moment, but it's not a bad life. That's a beautiful thing to finish on. Sarah, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, and being so open about everything you've experienced. It's been amazing to hear you talk, and there's so many things you said today that I know I can take back into my own life. I'm
Thank
leaving this
you.
chat much more knowledgeable than when we started. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story.
Thank you so much for having me, Jonathan.
So that was episode 3 of the Survivor Project. I just want to say a massive thank you to Sarah for sharing her story and for sharing it so openly. And I also want to say a massive thank you to you for being here with us. And if you'd like to follow more of Sarah's journey, I'll tag all her socials in the description. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate you sharing it on social media or send it to your friends. It's very hard to grow on social media these days. So in order to reach wider audiences, I really need your help. And as a thank you for your support, I have a 20% off code for all She the Hair products, TSP20. That can be redeemed at shethehair.com if you're interested. Next, there'll be a short shot about the products. And again, thank you. Episode 4 coming next week. She is the brand that I started when I was still hairdressing. The whole focus of it is hair health. In times of poor health, it's often our hair that shows the first telltale signs, and health issues can lead to hair loss and hair breakage. There's no denying that our hair is a major part of our identity. When it looks good, we feel good, so when it suffers, we suffer. If you suffer with hair issues, it can really knock your confidence. It can just be another kick when you're already feeling down. And that's where the She the hair care accessories come in. Your silk is naturally smooth, it's going to be frictionless and breathable. It reduces breakage, prevents split ends, and actually protects delicate or thinning hair. Whether that's tying your hair up with a silk scrunchie or nighttime protection with a mulberry silk bonnet or using a pillowcase. Traditional cotton pillowcases, they can pull, they can tug, and they can dehydrate the hair and also dehydrate the scalp. So they're going to exacerbate any existing issue. They lead to more hair loss and more hair breakage. So you can use the code TSP20 for 20% off the entire range. That's on shethehair.com. You can check out the range on the socials at She the Hair. All the details will be in the description.